Spirituality, sexuality, money, and power all have a common thread amongst them. They are different vehicles, different doors in which power on its own moves through our life in the physical reality. A way to understand this in spirituality is through Shakti, right? So Shakti is the power of Shiva. That is the name in Shakta Tantra that is given to the power of the universe. And you can go and study directly from the root. You can understand from Shakta Tantra what these 10 powers of the feminine mean. But whenever we look at the world how it is right now and the issues that most of us experience in the West, what's going on geopolitically, what's going on in spiritual spaces with the rampant abuse of all of these guru figures, and then also the new era that we're stepping into with AI and all of the massive confusion that people have of not knowing whether something is real or if something was AI. It's extremely important to understand the concept of discernment, right? A spiritual discernment and then also discernment in general. These times are the perfect breeding ground for even more confusion and gullibility of the masses. So it is important to start thinking about our own spiritual life from a perspective of ownership. Basically, not continuing to indulge in the fantasy that something outside needs to give us the answers, or that a particular teacher, or that this specific path, or that religion, or this political leader are the solution to the problems. Because the more that we do that, the more that we are stepping or running on the old program and not understanding the new invitation that life has for us. Right now, it is very important to start taking seriously both your own spiritual life, your relationship to your sexual energy, your relationship to the essence of power, both personal power and collective power, the understanding of power in the world, and then also the relationship that you have personally with money. These 4 doors are the ways in which we can really understand our deepest wounds. We can understand our psychology, and whenever we understand that, we can actually develop real discernment so that we do not fall for fake figures or gurus selling you a fantasy, selling you enlightenment, selling you ascension. We do not fall for cult-like mindsets, thinking that it is the aliens that are going to save us or this political party that is going to save us. And we do not continue feeding this dystopian reality that everything's doomed and we're about to step into a reality fully controlled by technology. Instead, these times are an invitation for really learning how to master ourselves spiritually so that we can navigate the world with maturity. A lot of spirituality is, I call it like the training wheels, right? The training wheels of spirituality, which is accepting an external framework and then abiding by those rules, living by those specific rules, right? Or accepting a cultural moral pattern or ethical pattern of how I'm supposed to behave or use my own sexual energy, or have a certain relationship with money based on the culture or the upbringing that I had. And the more that we let ourselves set for this externalized standard, the less that we are empowered in our choices. So today I want to talk to you about the 4 doors of power and Shakti and how we can use all of these 4 elements to do some really deep inner work to get to know ourselves, to do the shadow work on the parts that are needed, and then ultimately to reclaim your own sovereign power. Because sovereignty is what's going to be needed in this next season of life. If you're new here, my name is Silvana Isaza. I am a spiritual mentor and I help creatives, leaders, and mystics create their own spiritual system by taking ownership of their own power. So power is at the root of most of the distortions of this planet. It's either a misuse of power or a misunderstanding of power. In order to understand power, we have to really understand the 4 doors in which humanity and all of us are most likely to either give it away or abuse it. Because for as long as we see ourselves as victims of the system, the power is still outside. But if we only see ourselves as having all the power, then we become the tyrants that we so despise externally. So this is both an exploration of our inner personal shadows and our collective shadows so that we can find that center point. And that's where spirituality and physical reality will unite. It's in making sure that you can hold a non-dual perspective on the dualities of life, right in the middle, so you can integrate your spirituality and then also your physical and your material life. So I want to start off by discussing the 4 pillars of power, which I've mentioned before. All of these pillars, right, they are expressions of what in Shakta Tantra is called Shakti. In alchemy is the prima materia. In Jungian psychology, the libido. So it's the essence, the thing that pulls us into something, into creating, into acting, or into retracting, because it moves in both directions. It can move outward or inward. Equally, it can move downward or upward. And that is the conversation around spirituality. So the first pillar is connected to money. Money is earth, and this is associated to the element of coagulation in alchemy. Whenever we understand money, we have to understand the root wound, because if we understand the wound, we understand the mechanism that will form to really deal with this energy. And the wound here is the fear of unsafety, right? And scarcity. So everything that we work through with the element of money is at the core about safety and freedom, right? But safety comes first. That is the foundational. The second element is sex, right? So sex is water. In alchemy, it will be the solutio or the dissolution. And the root wound that we will have to understand here is the fear of separation. And this is going to come into the story of creation, right? Like the myth of Adam and Eve. And what does it mean for humanity to be split in the 2 genders and for us to live in a reality of duality? So these are the themes that we explore in sexuality, this desire for union and for coming back together with the source. The third one is power itself, power over ourselves and power over others. In alchemy, this will be the calcinatio, and the root wound of there are interactions with power, either abuse or disempowerment, is going to be the fear of helplessness. So feeling erased or feeling like you're not important, or the opposite of that, feeling like you are extremely important and above other people. So for every single one of these wounds, there's 2 polarities, right? There is the excessive and then the scarcity polarity of that. And what's important here is to learn sovereignty without the need to dominate other people or others or nature ourselves, but finding that balance. And then lastly is our relationship with the concept of God. And I'm talking not about God as an energy, but God as the logos, right? As the actual mental concept that we project the essence or the energy of God into. So in alchemy, this will be the sublimatio, what is called. This is air energy in essence. And the root wound that we're working through in our relationship to the concept of God is to feel cosmically orphaned or meaningless in the vastness of the universe. And the mastery of this will be to embody devotion without doubt, right? So these 4 pockets will allow us to really explore where in our life we are surrendering our power and where in our life we are abusing our power. Some of these pillars might be more balanced than others, and some of them tend to hold the key for the rest of pillars, right? So it's very important to also follow on the order of them, which will be first we start with safety, right? First with that element of money, because our concept of ourselves starts in the body. We get to understand who we are by realizing that we have a body. That's what we experience, going from baby to toddler to child to adolescent to adult. It's like a deepening into the body, and then we begin our journey into our spiritual concepts, into knowing ourselves. The second point to address will be power itself. And we see this in children, right? After they have realized that they are them and they're like animating this body, and their identity becomes, I am this person. They start playing little power games. My will over your will. So analyzing this is going to help us really determine who we are and who the other is. And that allows us to create boundaries. Boundaries meaning not like I don't allow you to do this, but boundaries saying like, this is me and this is the other. And this is the line that separates us both. The third level will be the understanding of sex, because in sex, we are uniting or merging two whole selves into a third energy. But if we're not a self yet, sexuality becomes consumption. And there's a lot of distortions when it comes to sexuality. We see it all over the world. Right now, the collective shadow of the world is coming to the surface to be processed, be witnessed, processed, felt, and alchemized by all of us, at least those of us that are willing to go there and willing to actually observe this collective shadow, because we all take a part on this. And really, we can see, we can understand what becomes a distortion and then what is healthy interaction with sexual energy. That's why it's the third level, right? And then the fourth level will be our understanding of the concept of God. For a lot of people that are devotional in nature, it almost feels like God becomes first before all of us. But whenever we are taking a mature approach into our spirituality and we're trying to individuate and we're trying to learn how to become a spiritual adult, which is, I need to be careful with this. How do I become a God? This has a massive asterisk. That statement is loaded. And I don't mean this, I mean this as the duality of being both creator and creation, right? So to take ownership of our spiritual life is to learn our creative power as well and our place in the cosmos. And this is one of the last things that we really explore in life, because it is connecting with the energy of surrendering into something that is beyond myself. So that becomes the pinnacle. It doesn't mean that we are in this specific order. It just means that the foundation starts setting off that way. And then life is a spiral. We always go back to different ones of these pillars to work through things. If you take a look, if you do some sort of inventory of your life, and then you look at all of the big experiences that you've had and all of the challenges and all of the crisis that may have happened, and you try to assign one of these four pillars to that experience, you kind of start seeing a pattern of things that you start going around. So I invite you to do this exercise. Really think about what is like the first crisis that you can think of in your life, and then how you have been moving through crisis or different periods of transformation or radical changes in your life. And then you assign one of these four forces to that moment of your life. You'll start seeing which ones hurt the most, which one it wasn't that big of a deal for you. It was easier to navigate, and which ones actually wrecked you. Because in this way, you can identify where your power leak is. And my entire work is about spiritual sovereignty. It's about creating your own spiritual system. I am a person that does not go into any sort of organized religion, and I've tried them all. And also, I believe that a lot of these Abrahamic religions are just control mechanisms that give us safety, because they are old. A lot of people participate in them. So you kind of have this herd that holds you, and you have this collective energy that is feeding this belief system, is feeding this collective egregore, and there's a certain safety in that. But if you want to take your spiritual life to the next level and learn to master yourself from a point of spiritual sovereignty, to find that center that regardless of what happens, the aliens takes over, war comes to the planet, like whatever happens, you will not lose yourself. That is spiritual sovereignty. And that is a process that demands that you take a really good look at yourself, at your shadows, and at your relationship with these four forces. If you want to be held in this process, then make sure that you check out my mentorship, The Access Point, because this is a deep one-on-one exploration that we do about each one of these pillars in your life. Otherwise, you can keep learning here. I'll keep making content about this. And this is just an introduction to this. I think I want to really expand on this because I recently did the interview, an interview with Mark Vicente. He is the author of the Narcissist Playbook documentary, and he was doing a series. He's doing a series called Instaguru, which is talking about a cult leader, modern cult leader, got famous on Instagram and YouTube, and has led many people into non-dual spiritual concepts that actually belong to Eastern religion, but that's another story. But in this process of going through this interview and kind of reopening this old narrative and this old energy in my life from like 7 years ago, I realized that one of the things that most people on a spiritual journey are looking for is that sense of belonging, understanding, and connection. Other group of people are looking for healing, right? To find that wholeness. Others are looking for escape from pain, right? That's where the spiritual bypassing becomes so addictive, like a drug, because I can leave the pain that I feel and just transcend it, non-dual myself into oblivion, transcending this material reality. And other people are actual seekers of truth. They have this, they want to know the truth, the ultimate truth. And, jokes on all of us, because at the end, we are in a world of polarities and dualities, and different perspectives are going to have different answers. The transcendental truths of life are not something that we really need to engage with as much, because they are transcendental truths that transcend material reality. We are here in physical bodies to learn how to live this life, how to master this identity, this temporary identity that I have, that keeps transforming and changing, that inhabits my body, that uses my body as an avatar, as a vehicle to interact with physical reality, and my relationship to physical matter. If your soul didn't want that experience or didn't need that experience of interacting with physical reality, you wouldn't have reincarnated or incarnated here on physical matter. You will still be in the oblivion of the oneness that is eternal. However, you are here. You are this person that I'm talking to. I am Silvana. And it is my journey and also my pleasure to explore who this is at a deeper level. What are all of the parts of myself? What are all of my fragmentations? And how can I walk through my life, bringing together and integrating all of these fragmented parts within myself and embody them all together, like encapsulate them? No, that's not the word. Contain them within an unified identity and unified expression. And how do all of these parts remain grounded and centered in this life, in this time, with whatever is actually going on in the world? I am personally so sick and tired of hearing these spiritual dudes just obliterate reality. Like, well, the war, like, it's Maya, it's the illusion. Yes, dude, sure. But does that mean that you wash your hands and then back off and then completely avoid the reality of what's going on? I've talked a lot about, I actually wrote an essay recently on, and I think, I also a YouTube video about it, which talks a lot about like cheap labor, the concept of cheap labor, which is so disgusting, and AI and our relationship to physical reality and the geopolitical problems that are going on in the world from a person that's on a spiritual path of self-mastery. Because it's very easy to say like, nope, I don't see, I don't hear, I'm gonna ignore this because it's all perfect as it is. It is supposed to be like that. And that's that transcendental truth that bypasses the physical experience that we have here. So I am definitely not a subscriber to this idea. I understand these concepts. I can talk about them. We can chit chat about them in parties, but I want to live a life where we are really addressing these things head on, and we are trying to understand, why am I here while this is going out in the world? What in my personal consciousness, in my history, in my ancestral lineage, in the things that I interact with in the world are feeding all of this external conflict? Because as above, so below, and as within, so without. It's all correspondence. That's the law of correspondence, is whatever is going on outside in the world is also going on inside me. So I don't just brush off all of these issues as Maya, the illusion, the matrix, but instead I interact with them. And I think the people that want to lead and want to create something and want to bring down like a modern mystical perspective to all of these issues, we all need to really tap into these four doors, these four pillars of power, of channeling of power, so that we can understand ourselves, we can understand the world, and we can actually begin creating and leading with our hearts, leading with consciousness, leading with awareness. This demands a spiritual maturity. This is not something that you can buy or fake. You can pretend and you can act it out, but your life will reflect that in every way possible. It will always reflect that. It's not something you can show on Instagram. It's something that you live through your daily actions, through the little things that you do, to every single personal relationship that you have in your life. So my desire is that you can find a space here in this channel, in this podcast, wherever you're listening to this from, to really question these topics and your relationship to these specific doors. Because whenever we start talking about the difficult things and the taboo topics, and we talk about sex and money, power and God, we are diving into the undercurrent that rules most of our behaviors, both personally and collectively. So I want to leave you with a little exercise for you to consider. From these four pillars and understanding the root wound and what is the thing that makes us either overcompensate or withdraw from that pillar, which of the four do you feel that is the most charged for you at this point in your life right now? And start asking yourself some questions about it. What is this pillar to me? What is sex to me? What is money to me? How do I feel about it? Do I run away or do I go all the way in? If it's triggering, there's going to be one of the two polarities. So in the next 12 weeks, I'm going to be sharing about all these pillars. We're going to be talking about Shakta Tantra, tantric practices to help you with your sexual energy. We're going to talk about power, which means that we're going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about geopolitics, about what's going on in the world, imperialism, racism, all of the isms that have affected the planet. We're going to talk about money, our relationship to abundance, our relationship to food, right? And resources, and what is money as an element and as an energy. Which polarity am I in? Over hoarding or the pushing away the energy, the scarcity wound? How do I identify that? And we're going to talk about God. What is the concept of God? How do I relate to something that is greater than myself? Where is it in my body? Do I have a grandiose complex where I want to become a guru because I feel that I am the biggest gift that life has created on this planet for other people? Or do I completely go into nihilist? Nothing exists, nothing matters. All of these dualities and polarities we're going to be exploring in the next 12 weeks. And hopefully after this series, you'll be able to be more aware of your own weakest points, and then you can also see your strengths. And the goal of all of this is for you to find that center, that access point. So thank you so much, and I'm super excited about this journey. I will see you next week.